Welcome to Mediaspace Members Daily. We bring you exclusive interviews from our leadership group and other professional influencers within the media, marketing, gov, tech community globally. Today I have with me Kellie Vincent, Associate Dean Teaching, Learning and Student Experience at the University of Bedfordshire. Hi Kellie, how are you?
Hi, I'm really well, thanks, Lavina. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. What are the current challenges in university education?
Well, where do we start? We're obviously in a big press period at the moment where there is an awful lot of speculation and discussion in the press about students in universities and the challenges that they face generally. Clearly, safety and the well-being of our students has got to be paramount. That has to be paramount for both students and staff. But I think it's been a challenging time, and aside from the immediate press and the immediate concerns, there has been a big shift as well. So within business schools particularly, and I come from a business school background, it's not just the business of being a business school or being a university, it's also the who teaches, the what we teach and the how we teach, which has very much been turned on its head. So in March, clearly with the rapid move away from campuses, there was a very, very fast ramping up of teams being able to deliver online. And for many academics, we were very familiar with digital spaces, we were very familiar with working online, but that's a completely different perspective when you factor in there's a pandemic and the mindsets of students have shifted and staff views and perceptions are shifted. People are suddenly dispersed into a mode of learning that they never really chose. So at that time, although I'm familiar with distance learning, having come from a distance learning background, the key challenge for me and my team was the fact that at that time in March, April, May, it was, we used to say okay is fantastic, because while there were lots of very well-meaning academics who were very familiar with digital spaces, the bit that people didn't really pick up on was that this was emergency online. And it's really different to having planned distance learning or planned digital courses. And for students who didn't choose to study that way and were anxious, and sometimes the practicalities of life got in the way, that was the big challenge. I think now we obviously have to look beyond the pandemic. The immediate concerns are, how do we create buzz and excitement and really put that fantastic mindset for learning in place in a sterile campus? And that's a very different learning space for students to be in. But equally, thinking about the future curriculum. So within a business school context, the nature of business has changed. Everyone talks about a new normal. I hate that term. I think it's kind of overused a little bit, because actually a lot of the trends that we saw as important trends that were coming through anyway have just been amplified and brought forward. But certainly within the area of business schools, the complexity and nature of our curriculum is changing. Business sectors that we thought were very solid and stable, airlines, for example, we have big airline and aviation management courses. That's clearly a very different future curriculum. There's a lot to think about, and I think it's still emerging. And in business schools, we've talked about VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, and it's been our bread and butter for years. But that seems almost like an insignificantly small term now, and we need a bigger term than VUCA. I think they're the key big trends anyway.
What are the opportunities right now?
The rapid move online actually gave business schools and students confidence in the fact that they can adapt and they can flex and they can change and be more agile. And agile business has been something that we've been talking about for a long time. I think with those fast track trends, so obviously the digital trend is a no-brainer, but we've also become much more open to discussing well-being. We've been much more open to discussing social trends and changes, already existing themes, but the whole idea of business for good has been really brought to the fore, and I think people are getting much more closely behind that ethos now. The whole area of interdisciplinary and collaborative approaches to learning has been really brought about, and if you look at some of the great business examples of all of those collaborations to make ventilators suddenly available where we had limited stocks in the UK and globally, all of those ideas and areas of working together in a more innovative way, I think have really been brought as we need to work this way. It's not a choice anymore. Whereas before it was probably innovation happens somewhere else. I think for business schools, it's very much innovation is happening here now. It's happening in businesses around us, and we need to reflect that and grab those opportunities. So opportunities in all of that areas mean we've got to be much more creative in how we assess students, how we're preparing students for the world of business, but also what we're doing to prepare them with virtual internships that possibly may have not been available before, because organisations may have been a bit more resistant to that. They're now very welcoming of having teams of students working with them to help just drive that innovation through from a fresh eyes perspective. That was probably not there in quite the same way as we are now. It's been a kind of rapid move forward.
What advice do you have to give in this new reality?
The big thing for me is that everyone now knows that digital is now and has been now for a long time, but don't get too wedded to individual tools. I think we've seen already the changes that technology and the steps of changes that technology has gone through already in the past 6 months. Online tools will completely change. They will continue to morph and change and adapt. So don't become too wedded to one and expect it to stay the same forever. I'd also say don't resist collaborative efforts to really think about diversifying and working in areas where you haven't worked before. So, if you think about it from a business example, whoever would have thought that a major collaboration would happen between Hilton and cleaning manufacturers, but actually a lot of their brands, the Dettol and Hilton collaboration was a very early example of organisations thinking a bit more creatively about how to work together. And I think in terms of how businesses are messaging their ethos and their approach, that's got to be thought of in a much more caring, well-being based approach, and really recognising humanity. So the big point for me is that all businesses only exist because humans are behind them. And I think there's been much more recognition that to thrive, you've got to really think about humans and how we can make human life better, really.
Thank you, Kellie, for joining us and for sharing your knowledge and expertise. Stay tuned for the next episode of Mediaspace Members Daily. In the meantime, connect with us at mediaspace.global.